The 5 starts now.
Good afternoon. Time for the 5 o'clock news roundup here on Newstalk 93 FM. I'm Errol Lee.
And I'm Andre Bernard.
Coming up in this newscast, JLP calls on parents and teachers to work together to enhance learning environment as new school year begins.
JLP East St. Thomas candidate Delano Seavright calls for state funding for political aspirants.
PNP delegates in East Portland vote for Andrea Moore to represent them in the next general elections.
And Tivoli resident provides West Kingston inquiry with pictures of explosive device found in his community during the incursion.
Now the details. Jamaica Labour Party spokesperson Kamina Johnson-Smith has called on parents and teachers to work together to ensure that children understand the importance of education to enhance the learning environment. In her back-to-school message, the opposition spokesperson on education said parents need to pay closer attention to the work their children are doing in school.
Always try to attend PTA meetings and be a part of the school community. You know the seeds of greatness are within your children, but our education system will not give us the results we all want and need if you are not a big part of the process. Preparing a good learning base at home and reinforcing the importance of school and what is learnt there. Our schools need you as much as we need them.
Johnson-Smith says students should do their part by paying attention in class, even as they make time for play.
Please pay attention in class. Make time for work and play, but ensure you do your homework and hand it in on time. Ask questions in class if you don't understand. Tell the teacher if you can't see the board. Try hard to be disciplined and have good manners and morals. You are the future leaders of Jamaica. A bright and prosperous future for Jamaica can only be realized if you, our future leaders, work hard and be the best you can be as young citizens and students of Jamaica.
And Mrs. Johnson-Smith says teachers also need to continue to go above and beyond to get the best out of their students.
We understand your challenges and encourage you to continue to go above and beyond to pull the best out of your students. We also encourage you to look out for the ones who might need more support. Discuss possible strategies with the parents and the guidance counselor. You can make the difference.
JLP spokesperson on education, Kamina Johnson-Smith.
Meanwhile, the JLP spokesperson on education says she is concerned about the drought conditions that are affecting schools across the island.
Parents, please find out if your child's school has adequate water, and if possible, give your child drinking water to take to school. Let's all work together to keep our children healthy during this water crisis. No teaching time must be lost due to this water crisis.
Johnson-Smith says while she welcomes the move by the government to make 200 tanks available for schools, much more work needs to be done, as the government had months to plan for this new school term.
The government has had months to plan for this new school term. While we're pleased that 200 tanks have been given to some schools, much more work needs to be done. We are especially concerned about the number of schools that don't have tanks and question whether the Ministry of Education has made sufficient arrangements to refill tanks where they exist. The Ministry of Finance should see to it that the NWC and the Ministry of Education are able to deliver to all schools affected by the drought sufficient water for their needs.
Johnson-Smith says while the opposition is pleased to hear the minister's new call for principals to exercise flexibility, more clarity is needed to prevent further confusion.
We were pleased to hear the Minister's new call on principals to exercise flexibility. The Ministry of Education must, however, speak with absolute clarity on this matter to prevent further confusion among parents and schools. The Ministry must also quickly develop clear guidelines on auxiliary fees.
JLP spokesperson on education, Kamina Johnson-Smith. Her comments follow reports that up to this morning, a child was sent home from Happy Grove High School due to non-payment of auxiliary fees. According to the ministry, this report was investigated and addressed.
Meanwhile, JLP caretaker for East St. Thomas, Delano Seawright, is calling on the National Water Commission to truck water to schools throughout his constituency or face what he describes as a heightened health crisis brought on by the lack of water. He says as it now stands, many basic and primary schools are without water. Seawright has also urged the NWC to address the challenge of the Apple Farm, Ducken Field, Acadia water supply system, which has run dry, severely affecting thousands of residents. He says as a temporary measure, the NWC could access 50 feet of groundwater on the old Eastern Banana property in Golden Grove by installing a pump and the relevant connectors. And the St. Thomas JLP candidate is calling for constitutional reform to secure funds for sitting MPs and aspirants for their constituencies.
I have always believed that we need fundamental constitutional reform. That's a sort of pet project that I am going to start championing, because I believe the system in and of itself is problematic and very difficult for anybody, including MPs who have the best of intentions, to succeed. So I believe there has to be some consideration of constitutional reform.
However, Seawright was quick to point out that even if funds were granted to the respective constituencies, there would still be several challenges and several difficulties would still exist.
Nevertheless, people, if you sign up for politics, you have to sign up for the cost. You have to also sign up for the difficulties and the challenges. It's a part of the process. It's not an easy job, and it's something that you just have to accept. But in any case, I believe there has to be some reform to the system, because as it stands now, the politics of scarce benefits and spoils is very, very...
East St. Thomas candidate for the JLP, Delano Seawright.
People's National Party PNP delegates in East Portland yesterday voted for Andrea Moore to represent them in the next general election. Moore, an attorney at law, narrowly defeated Member of Parliament Dr. Linvale Bloomfield by 8 votes. Moore got 141 votes to Bloomfield's 133 after 274 delegates cast their ballots at the Port Antonio High School yesterday. Some 384 delegates were eligible to vote. Regional Chairman Dr. Maurice Guy announced the results, stating that the process was a good one. Guy said the result will now go to the executive of the party, where it has to be ratified, and the National Executive Council and the party leadership have the final say. The defeated Bloomfield also praised the process and accepted the result.
North St. Anne Member of Parliament Dr. Dayton Campbell is calling on his constituents to re-elect him because he has represented him well during his term in office.
The mission is to move people to prosperity. I'm in politics for the outcome and not the income. So the financial challenges will never be a deterrent to the mission of assisting people who are from the lower class. When you look at persons who are living in poverty and they need somebody to create an opportunity for them and to make that representation so they can be better off.
He says he gets a sense of appreciation to represent the people, to see that he can make a change for the better for them.
A sense of appreciation and a sense of gratitude that comes from being able to execute some of those projects is way more than the financial earnings you would have from practicing medicine. And the thing is that success, I believe, is really not about making money alone. It's really about making change in people's lives. What it is that I come from very humble beginnings. See a lot of people who I'm not related to, but I can relate to. And based on my own journey, that it is possible for persons to come out of abject poverty and to achieve their goals. And I think that they need leaders who are familiar with that journey, create a similar thing for them and their children.
North St. Anne Member of Parliament Dr. Dayton Campbell.
Former parliamentarian Sharon Hay Webster has expressed a renewed interest in serving as the Jamaica Labour Party JLP's candidate for North East St. Catherine. Hay Webster, a 2-term MP for the old South Central St. Catherine constituency for the PNP, was rejected by the JLP's hierarchy following protests by sitting MP Gregory Mair that he was being undermined. However, last week, Mair indicated that he would be leaving representational politics. In a letter to JLP General Secretary Dr. Horace Chang, Party Chairman Robert Montague and JLP area leaders Everald Warmington and Dr. Andrew Wheatley, Hay Webster said she still has an interest in responding to the cry of constituents. She says this renewed interest is also registered in light of the response to her initial application submitted earlier this year, where she received correspondence from the office of the JLP, which stated that her application was not favorably considered by the selection committee.
And we're just getting news out of Trinidad, where there's a general election in progress. And the latest news is that the polls have been extended by 1 hour until 7 p.m. Trinidad time, which will be 6 p.m. our time. The decision was taken after the Boundaries and Elections Commission, the EBC, received reports of long lines at polling stations and difficulty by voters in getting to the polls because of the flooding and the congested traffic. We'll have more on the Trinidad elections later in this newscast. A resident of Tivoli Gardens today provided the West Kingston Commission of Inquiry with photographs of an explosive device he claimed was found in a neighbor's yard 1 month after the police military operations in his community. Romaine Walker said the device was taken to the Office of the Public Defender, where photographs were taken before it was handed over to the Bureau of Special Investigations, the police division charged with probing the circumstances under which more than 70 persons lost their lives in the operation. Walker recounted that he was in his Lewis Path home on May 24, 2010, when he heard several loud explosions that were different from the normal gunshots. Walker said he climbed a wall to see what was happening and saw 3 of his neighbors lying in the road with various injuries. He said one of them, Carl George Henry, was bleeding from the head and crying for help. Walker, then 21 years old, said shortly after another explosive device fell in the yard next to his house, which was occupied by his neighbor Michael Williams. He said a month after the operation, Williams told him that he had found a mortar shell in his yard.
Opposition spokesman on Science, ICT and Digital Society Development, Dr. Andrew Wheatley, is calling for changes to the cybercrimes bill that has been tabled in Parliament amid fears that it threatens freedom of expression. He has also called on the government to reconsider some of the key provisions outlined in the proposed legislation. Dr. Wheatley says he has concerns about the bill in its current form, as it contains provisions that may adversely impact ICT users, in addition to affecting the growth and development of the sector as a whole. He says while the need for the new provisions is understood, greater care needs to be exercised in striking a balance between enforcement on one hand and usage of the technology on the other.
The Independent Commission of Investigations, INDECOM, has started a probe into this morning's fatal shooting of a man by a police team along Collie Smith Drive in Kingston. Shortly after the shooting, several residents took to the streets in protest. They say shortly after 6 o'clock, 24-year-old Andrew Gale was picking Ackies when members of a police team searching for a wanted man ordered him to stop. The residents say the police then fired at Gale, hitting him. According to them, Gale ran into a nearby yard where he was again shot and he died on the spot. Indicom says they have received reports from the JCF that approximately 71 police officers were conducting special joint operations in the Trenchtown area in search of wanted men, illegal guns and ammunition. It says one team of officers entered premises on 4th Street and accosted a man who allegedly engaged them twice. The engagement ended with the man being shot and injured. The team says it is still on the scene collecting information. Indicom says interviews with police personnel and civilians are currently being conducted at different locations.
In regional news, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has pledged to build a comprehensive plan for Petrocaribe in the next 10 years, spanning 2015 to 2025. Maduro, who was speaking at the recent summit to mark the 10th anniversary of the signing of the energy agreement, told regional leaders that Petrocaribe offers a different and successful model for lower-income countries in the Caribbean and Latin America. He says Petrocaribe is part of a successful experiment of the integration of energy. Maduro says this is a project that has demonstrated in its 10 years that it is possible to construct a different model.
And as we told you, the elections in Trinidad and Tobago have been extended by an hour to allow for more persons to get to the polling stations because they're having the kind of heavy rains that we would like to have in Jamaica.
We wish we were having at the moment.
Anyway, the rains are slowing the traffic down and causing people to have difficulty getting to the polling stations, so they have extended the polling by an hour, which means that instead of getting the usual closure in Trinidad at 5 o'clock our time, the polls will go on until 6 o'clock our time, and allow another 2 to 3 hours for the first results. And sometime around 9 o'clock tonight, Jamaica time, we should know what is happening down there in terms of the results of the elections. That's your local and regional news. For international news, we join the BBC.
BBC News with Jerry Smith. The Czech Republic, Slovakia and Romania have rejected any obligatory system of distributing refugees between EU member states following French and German calls for quotas to be introduced. They said their countries would help to resolve the crisis only on a voluntary basis. The UN Refugee Agency has begun helping the Greek authorities to process the large numbers of migrants on the Aegean island of Lesbos. They're estimated to be between 17 and 25,000 refugees there. Meanwhile, hundreds of migrants have broken through Hungarian police lines close to the border with Serbia. They've set off along one of Hungary's main motorways towards Budapest. The British Prime Minister David Cameron says a drone strike in Syria, which killed 2 British fighters with the Islamic State group, was carried out in self-defence. Mr Cameron told Parliament that one of those who died had been actively plotting terrorist attacks to be carried out in Britain. He insisted there was a clear legal basis for the killings. The Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu has promised to wipe out the militants of the Kurdish group the PKK. He was speaking after the government said a roadside bomb planted by the guerrillas had killed 16 soldiers. It was the deadliest PKK attack on Turkish forces for years. Thousands of people have attended the funeral of a Palestinian woman, Riham Dawabsha, who was the victim of an arson attack on her home in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. Militant Jewish settlers are suspected of carrying out the firebombing, which drew international condemnation. The Nigerian army has banned the use of horses and donkeys in the northeastern state of Borno as part of efforts to fight Boko Haram jihadists. Correspondents say the group has resorted to attacking villages on horseback because they're finding it difficult to obtain fuel for their vehicles. BBC News.
Broadcast Jamaican and Newstalk 93 FM now gear the news in the Jamaican language.
Good evening. My name is Kadeen Marshall and this are the news in the Jamaican language. The Independent Commissioner Investigation Indicom are looking at the killing of one man by some police on the Collie Smith Drive in Kingston this morning. Him a 24 years old Andrew Gale. Little after the shooting, the people them in the community blocked the road and being a cuss. As according to the report, little after 6, some policemen in the area are look for wanted man. Them say Gale pick some ackee and them tell him to stop. Them claims that the police shoot Gale after that. Gale run going to one next yard and the police shoot him again. Him dead on the spot. Some police who work at the Kingston Wharf find 2 shipments of cocaine were been come from Suriname were worth $2.4 million in Jamaica. As according to one release from the Kingston Wharf today, some officers realized that something right with the shipment, and when them search it, them find 2 black bags of cocaine. Them run some tests that show that the bag them having 41.12 pounds of cocaine, them not lock up nobody. The Border Protection Unit at the Jamaica Customs Agency and the Jamaica Constabulary Force Narcotics Division are looking at the matter. Delano Seaverett, where the JLP caretaker for Eastern St. Thomas, are called upon the National Water Commission for bring water to the school them in the constituency, cause some sickness might have gone, cause most of the school them have no water right now. Seaverett has said the NWC must look on the Upper Farm, Duncanfield, Arcadia water supply system, cause a long time it not have no water, and this cause a problem too. Him say what the NWC must do for the time being, I put one pump to the 50 feet of groundwater upon the all eastern banana property in a Golden Grove and go and use the water there. News from the rest of the Caribbean. Fundel Stewart, who are the Prime Minister for Barbados, and Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, who are the Prime Minister for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, signed one treaty which shows maritime boundary between the two countries them. This shows the distance in the water will border after two countries them. This is the first treaty where Barbados has signed with one country in the Organization for Eastern Caribbean State, OECS. Stewart said the treaty shows that the country them are work for the betterment of the Caribbean and for the better cooperation between the two countries them. News from foreign. Some people set up camp in a Moldova capital and accused that the president must left the work after them find out about $1 billion bank fraud. Over 10,000 people been in the square yesterday accused. Them claims that the fraud mash up the way people in the country can live. The government been have to help out 3 banks last year after $1 billion disappear out of them account. One report where Smaddy leaks say one 28-year-old businessman set up everything and take the money. Me name Kadeen Marshall and that are the news in the Jamaican language.
Broadcast Jamaican and Newstalk 93 FM just give the news in the Jamaican language.
The 5 o'clock Sports Roundup is brought to you by Newstalk 93 FM, life-changing radio.
Good afternoon. With your 5 o'clock sports roundup here on Newstalk 93 FM, I am Mikhail Drama Johns, and we begin with football. This evening we'll see the University of the West Indies UAFC play a historic first ever top flight game. They will open their Registrar Premier League RSPL account against title holders Arnett Gardens FC on what marks the first night of the Monday night show. With a main aim of staving off relegation, this evening's 8:30 p.m. kickoff will begin a 9-month journey for UAFC, which head coach Marcel Gill says will require much hard work. Meanwhile, top flight action opened last night. The biggest win went to Portmore United, who blanked Montego Bay United MBU 2-0. The only other win on the day was a 1-0 clipping of Humberland by Western outfit Reno FC. Meanwhile, there was disappointment for Calvin Fitzgerald, head coach of Waterhouse FC, as well as Harold Thomas, his rival at Rivoli United FC. The sides' fixture ended in a card-filled goalless draw. The finish between Tivoli Gardens and Cavalier SC was also a 0-0 stalemate, while Harbourview and Boys Town shared spoils with a goal apiece. The KSA Business House five-a-side competition restarts this evening after a weekend break and will see Jamaica Brawlers Group facing Spanish Grain Store at 6:30 p.m. Also at that time will be the matches between Darramon Trading Company Limited and McKay Security Company Limited, CariMed versus Bank of Jamaica BOJ, as well as Office of the Prime Minister OPM against Sunlight Windows and Doors. A second bout of matches, seeing Pika Challenge Peak Bottling Company and Kier Meat Salada Foods Jamaica Limited, will begin at 7:15 p.m. All matches are to be contested at the National Water Commission NWC playfield in Mona. Still on football, following their 3-2 defeat in their World Cup qualifier on Friday, head coach Winfred Schaefer says his Reggae boys can bounce back. He says they can earn a favorable win in tomorrow's return leg against Nicaragua if they believe in themselves and return to their core values of executing as a unit. Friday saw Nicaragua netting two early goals to be leading 2-0 within 10 minutes of the first whistle before adding a third early second half. The boys would have a late surge, netting 2 goals in the latter half of the second. While Schaefer opted not to give comment after the match, these were the views of defender Kemar Lawrence.
Sharper, that's just it. You just have to be a bit sharper, that's just it. Definitely in front of goal and definitely defensive. I took the first 2 as my mistake. Right now, the focus is just going there, win the game. We can't go there and think about anything else. It's just going there, win the game on much goal as possible. We're definitely going there to win and progress to the next round.
voice thereof defender Kemar Taxi Lawrence. Meanwhile, tomorrow's game will be without striker Giles Barnes. He has been ruled out of the return leg round 3 CONCACAF World Cup qualifying tie as he is not allowed to play on artificial surfaces. Barnes' place has been taken by Upston Edwards. And further afield, the Republic of Ireland today kept alive their hopes of a Euro 2016 qualification after handing Georgia a 1-0 defeat in Group D. Meanwhile, Scotland fell 3-2 to Germany and Northern Ireland held Hungary to a 1-1 draw. And now to move on to track and field. After a golden performance at the recently held Beijing World Championships, Jamaican and world's fastest man Usain Bolt is to hang up his spikes for this season. With the Diamond League meeting yet contested, the double world record holder opted not to compete at this Friday's meeting in Brussels, Belgium. Bolt says while he is already looking to next year's Olympics in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, he will take a short break and make a return to training come next month. Meanwhile, female sprinter Shelley-Ann Fraser-Pryce, who earned the Diamond Trophy for the 100 meters last Friday, yesterday broke a 25-year-old meet record. The previous 100-meter mark at the 29th meeting City di Padova in Italy was at 10.99 seconds, which was held by compatriot Merlene Ottey. Fraser-Pryce, running into a headwind of 0.8 meters per second, posted a 10.98 seconds for the win and new meet record. Brazil's Rosângela Santos was second in 11.42 seconds, American Shalanda Solomon third in 11.50 seconds, while Jamaica's Natasha Morrison was fourth. And finally, in an apparent response to calls in some quarters for the government to implement a welfare program for Jamaica's athletes, Minister Natalie Nita Headley has promised a national insurance scheme, NIS, that will cover 1,500 athletes across sporting disciplines. Nita Headley said the government will do everything to ensure that the athletes are well taken care of. And that's it for the 5 o'clock sports roundup here on Newstalk 93 FM. I am Michaela Drama John saying stay tuned for the business news and weather report.
The 5 o'clock sports roundup was brought to you by Newstalk 93 FM, life-changing sports radio.
.28 and time for business news. On the local stock market today, the index declined by 160 by 0.92 to close at 100,132.54. The junior market index advanced by 3.46 to close at 970.44. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 19 stocks, of which 6 advanced, 10 declined, and 3 traded firm. Market volume amounted to 1.9 million units, valued at over $13.8 million. D&G was today's volume leader. Stocks advancing: D&G, Gleaner, Brawlers, JMMB Group, NCB, and Supreme Ventures. Stocks declining: Berger, Carb Cement, Carreras, Grace, JMMB 8.75, Mayberry, Sagicor Group, Sagicor Real Estate X Fund, Scotia Group, and Scotia Investments. And on the foreign exchange market, the US dollar closed at $118.16, the pound $179.38, the Canadian $89.39, and the euro $131.34. That's business news.
And now we take a look at the weather. There is a tropical wave to the east of Jamaica, which is expected to move across the island later this evening. In the forecast for tonight, conditions will be partly cloudy.
To end the news, the main points. JLP calls on parents and teachers to work together to enhance the learning environment.
JLP East St. Thomas candidate Delano Seavright calls for state funding for political aspirants.
PNP delegates in East Portland vote for Andrea Moore to represent the party in the next general elections.
And Tivoli resident provides West Kingston Inquiry with pictures of explosive device found in his community during the Tivoli incursion.
And the latest from Trinidad and Tobago is that heavy rainfall across the Twin Islands state has led the Electoral Boundaries Commission to extend voting by 1 hour, and so the electors now have until 7 o'clock this evening Trinidad time to get to the polls. That's your 5 o'clock news roundup here on Newstalk 93 FM. I'm Errol Lee.
And I'm Andre Bernard.
The evening edition is next.